Homer's Enemy is a dark satirical episode in The Simpsons. The episode takes an even darker turn as it features an off-screen death of a character who's meant to represent real-life American work culture. It's famous for offering an entertaining critique and features Frank Grimes as a foil to Homer's bumbling self. The episode introduces Frank as a hardworking man whose life has been filled with hardship. He starts working at the Springfield nuclear power plant and is shocked by Homer's laziness, incompetence, and undeniable success. Frank Grimes serves as a meta-commentary on the absurdity of Homer's character. Unlike the usual tone of the show, where everyone accepts Homer's flaws with humor and forgiveness, Grimes reacts with realistic disbelief and growing resentment. His frustration culminates into a full-blown breakdown and tragic death, highlighting the surreal and unjust world of The Simpsons. Frank Grimes is a serious and disciplined individual who has worked diligently throughout his life to achieve his goals. Comparably, Homer is lazy, underqualified, and irresponsible. Despite this, he remains inexplicably successful, holding a high-paying job and has a loving family. The brilliance of this episode lies in its ability to blend comedy with existential angst. It leaves its audience questioning what kind of values are rewarded in society. It also challenges viewers to reconsider the norms they've grown accustomed to in long-running family-friendly sitcoms. Homer's Enemy remains iconic for its bold narrative choices and meta-commentary on what success means in modern life. The Simpsons is an American animated sitcom created by Matt Groening. Premiering in 1989, the show follows the Simpsons family: Homer, Marge, Bart, Lisa, and Maggie in the fictional town of Springfield. Homer, the ridiculous but attentive father, works at the nuclear power plant and often finds himself in chaotic situations due to his impulsive and reckless behavior. Marge, the lovable mother and the moral voice of the family, tries to keep things together. Bart, the naughty 10-year-old, causes trouble both at home and at school, while Lisa, his 8-year-old sister, is a gifted intellectual. Maggie, the baby, doesn't really speak, but often surprises people with her subtle intelligence. Throughout its decades-long run, The Simpsons has become a cultural phenomenon, known for its vast ensemble of quirky supporting characters. With a mixture of humor and heart, it remains the most enduring and iconic series in television history. It's nostalgic, and it's embedded in my memories. I fondly remember watching this show with my family, often comparing them to the characters within it. Who are your favorite characters? What's your favorite episode? Please let me know in the comments, and hopefully I'll be able to create a video on it. The episode begins with Kent Brockman, a news anchor, reading the news to the people of Springfield. He introduces Frank Grimes, a 35-year-old man who's earned everything the hard way. This sets up the premise that Frank Grimes is the character of interest for this episode. We learn his backstory. He was abandoned at the age of 4 and had never attended school. Having Kent Brockman explain Frank's backstory is a clever way to inform the audience, without making this exposition sound boring. Mr. Burns, the owner of the nuclear power plant, sees this broadcast and seeks to hire Frank Grimes. The next day, Frank is brought to the plant where he is employed. Homer's safety cubicle, we see him twirling around in his chair. Homer's bumbling personality is dialed up, providing a strong contrast to Frank Grimes. Lenny and Carl enter, explaining to Homer that a new guy has been employed and that they should introduce themselves. Frank Grimes is organizing his new office. Homer, Lenny, and Carl have their faces pressed up against the window, eager to meet Frank. Even this early in the episode, a significant difference is already apparent between Frank and the guys. Frank introduces himself. Homer immediately annoys Frank by touching his stuff on his desk. Homer wants to take his pencils, which have Frank's name on them. Something as small as this amazes Homer, while Frank gives the standard response that any supply company can have them made for you. Frank notices that Lenny and Carl are admiring his diploma. Lenny explains that he and Carl hold a master's degree, but Homer has no formal qualifications in nuclear physics. Homer, being his usual friendly self, suggests to Frank that if he turns the security cameras around, no one will notice. Then Frank can sleep on the job. Homer is eating lunch in the cafeteria. Frank Grimes spots Homer eating from a bag labeled Frank Grimes, which is his special lunch. The language differences between them are apparent, with Frank adopting a more professional tone and Homer speaking in a more relaxed, friendly manner. Frank notices that all his pencils have been chewed, clearly the work of Homer, who is seen in his office cleaning his ears with the pencils. Frank is extremely annoyed at this point, breaking the pencils that are in his hand. Homer enters Frank's office. He has a new nickname for Frank, Grimy. Frank politely asks Homer to leave. Homer acts obnoxious, singing out loud. Homer's control panel starts blaring alarms. Homer, despite working at the plant since it opened, is unaware of the procedure manual and is blissfully unaware of how to shut it down. He grabs a bucket of water and pours it onto the control panel, causing it to malfunction and stop. Frank is in utter shock. In the break room, Homer is devouring snacks and donuts. Frank is observing this, commenting that he eats like a pig. Being polite isn't getting Frank anywhere, and unlike before, he is outright insulting Homer. Frank is stunned at the absurd actions of Homer. Frank is acting like a normal person would when working alongside Homer. He points out that Homer should have been killed multiple times by now. Homer grabs a bottle of acid by mistake, putting it to his mouth to drink. Frank notices this just in time and swats the bottle away, causing it to spill on a wall, eroding that wall. Mr. Burns sees the hole in the wall. He furiously asks who did this. Homer points to Frank, who is then reprimanded. Frank is angry and confronts Homer. He tells him that he hates him, declaring himself Homer's enemy. At Moe's, a bar in Springfield, Homer sulks. Moe suggests inviting Frank to dinner to smooth things over between them, and Homer likes this idea. Marge begins getting the house ready, lighting candles, and getting everyone to wear their best clothes. She's cooking a lavish meal of lobster. Homer explains that Frank is unaware he's even coming to dinner, but thinks that Homer has something to tell him, something he can't say at work. The doorbell rings. Frank has arrived. Frank appears, wearing crumpled clothing. He's introduced to the family by Homer. Frank discloses that he has a night job and lives in a small apartment above a bowling alley. Frank lives like most people, holding 2 jobs and residing in a small, noisy apartment. Homer is amazed that Frank lives above a bowling alley, which is Homer's dream workplace, a dream that he gave up for his family. Frank notices the picture of Homer meeting famous people, like President Ford. Frank loses his mind, ranting about how hard he has had to work to achieve his current position in life. Homer is sitting in his car, deeply ashamed of what happened the night before. Marge consoles Homer. This causes him to resolve to become more professional, so Frank will no longer resent him. Homer is at his desk, attempting to eat a donut with a knife and fork. Clearly, Homer didn't understand what being professional at work means. Frank sees through this poor attempt, sighing as he walks away from Homer. He walks into the break room, where Carl and Lenny are having a snack. Frank points out that accidents have increased since Homer became a safety inspector. Despite his argument, he still gets dismissed by Lenny and Carl. This causes him to declare that he would die a happy man if everyone could see how stupid Homer is. While walking out, he sees a flyer for a children's competition. He gets an idea. Frank adjusts the flyer, removing words like children. He wants to trick Homer into competing. Homer sees this flyer and decides to compete to show everyone how professional he is. He wins the competition with Mr. Burns handing him an award of first prize. Frank goes insane, shouting that this is a contest for children. Frank has a mental breakdown, claiming that he can be lazy too. This leads Frank to grab onto some cables without safety gloves on, despite a high voltage warning on them. Frank unfortunately dies. At the funeral, Reverend Lovejoy is reading a speech about the life of Frank Grimes. Homer is sleeping through this, and in a sleepy daze, he tells Marge to change the TV channel. Everyone begins laughing, and Frank is lowered into the ground. Homer's Enemy is a standout episode of The Simpsons. This episode illustrates how life can be unfair and that hard work doesn't always guarantee success. Frank Grimes is the kind of person who follows all the rules, puts in effort, and takes responsibility. But he still ends up suffering, while someone like Homer, who ignores regulations, does the bare minimum, gets everything he wants. This might seem silly because it's just a family cartoon show, but it reflects a fundamental truth about life. Sometimes people who try their best don't get what they deserve, while others who don't try at all get extremely lucky. The episode uses Frank's story to convey this hard truth, whether the world truly rewards people fairly. This episode is also a clever way for the show to make fun of itself. Typically, the audience laughs at Homer's silly actions because we're used to the wild world of The Simpsons. But Frank Grimes reacts like how a normal, average person would. He's shocked, confused, and upset. Through Frank, the writers are asking us to take a step back and think about how strange Homer's world is. In a way, Frank Grimes represents the audience. If we were to stop laughing and start taking things seriously, the episode becomes a kind of inside joke about how unrealistic The Simpsons can be, and what would happen if we inserted a real person into that world. In the end, Homer's Enemy is both funny and deeply thought-provoking. It uses comedy to tell a story about a serious issue, the unfairness of life, and the difference between how things should work and how they actually do work. Frank Grimes is a tragic character, but he teaches us a very valuable lesson about how the world sometimes rewards the wrong thing. Even though the episode ends with Homer sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of what's just happened, the viewers are left to ponder the meaning behind it all. This mix of humor and profound meaning is what makes Homer's Enemy one of the most potent and memorable episodes in The Simpsons' very, very long history.